Dan, welcome back to the Way of Champions. Jerry and I are thrilled to be back here with you. I wish you wrote a book more often, but whenever you do, they're always fantastic and I always grab them right away. So congrats on the new book.
Thank you. Every 5 years, let's do this. I wish I was faster too, but I just can't make it happen faster than it
I think
does.
you're
So
like 2 years ahead of David Epstein. He's like every seven and he gets very upset about that. So
fair enough. I like it. I know Dave. I like being in a race with him.
yeah, yeah. Well, you both write about such interesting things. I first didn't really meet you, but I saw you when the Talent Code came out and you did a presentation for US Soccer at Nike headquarters in Portland. And I was down there as one of the participants when they unveiled their first curriculum. And
Mm.
you had just come out with the Talent Code and everything, and I've been a huge fan since. But maybe you can just trace for our listeners who aren't familiar, and I don't think there are too many, but your journey from the talent code to the culture code to now this idea of flourishing.
Let's get in the time machine, John.
Yeah, let's get in the time
There
machine.
we go back. Yeah, no, I guess if I went all the way back, I'd say like I grew up in the middle of sort of three Irish twins. We were three boys born within about 22 months of each other. And it's really kind of a thing where it's like the question of like, how do I compete was always kind of with me from birth, from that moment. And so I grew up with a natural interest in performance and tried to be good at stuff myself. Almost went into medical school, took this left turn into journalism, and evolved this career where I got really interested in, okay, what is the machinery behind the magic? You know, like you'd see these talent hotbeds, places where all the great chess players are from this one place, all the great tennis players are from this one place, all the great opera singers are from this one place. What's going on in those places? And the beautiful thing about journalism is that it's this license to be curious. You can call people up and say, hey, I'm really interested in what you do. Can I come visit you? And they say yes for some reason. And then that's where kind of I started with this interest in individual talent. Like, how does talent grow within a single person? And then when I first started writing books, I thought books were about like finding the answers. But what I've found that I was wrong. They're really about like finding better questions.
Yeah.
And so when I got to that end of talent code, it was like, okay, that's how individual talent grows in these environments of deep practice and these great coaching exchanges. But that led me to the next mystery, which is what's happened in these super high performing groups, like the Navy SEALs or the San Antonio Spurs or Pixar. Like, how are they adding up to more than the sum of their parts? So that was the next big journey. Like, okay, we did individuals, let's look at the group. And then you kind of get to the end of the group thing, which was the culture code. And you start, and I'm a little older at this point, since I only write a book every 5 or 7 years. It's like you all of a sudden wake up and you're like, oh, I'm in my mid 50s. And you naturally start thinking about, oh, there's a lot of successful groups and individuals in the world, but are they like fulfilled at the end of their days? Are they part of these thriving communities? Because we know in the modern world, you can succeed and it can be sad. You can succeed and have it be empty. You can succeed and have it be toxic. But who are the people who are like accomplishing that? That was the mystery that led me to this book. Like who's performing and thriving and growing and generating new stuff and able to adapt to this changing world and waking up with energy and connection and all the science that we know about fulfillment and about kind of life and thriving has to do with relationships. So that's what led me to this book of like, who's building these amazing communities, not
Mhm.
just a high performing group, but like a great community that you'd want to be a part of, that you'd want your kids to be a part of. And so that's what led me to this book, this latest book, Flourish. So typically took like 5 years did my same thing. I call them up. Can I come visit? Yes.
Yeah.
Align it with the best science we got. And that's the book that's before us now.
What's interesting is there seems to be a number of books coming out around now around this topic, around this idea that maybe the way that popular culture defines success isn't really success at all, right? Or on a sports team, the goal is to win, but the purpose is something much deeper and bigger. And I think, I've seen these books come out that, even if you're a high performing athlete or, um, an individual who retires, right? You still want to matter. You still want to flourish. You can have all the money in the bank and be miserable, You can
Hmm.
have no money in the bank and be truly happy. And why do you think all this is coming out now?
It's this incredible age we're living in. I mean, go back a little bit. We've lived through this really a revolution. We just saw Michigan win the national championship with a certain kind of coach. This guy
Yeah,
Dusty May, who's teacher,
yeah,
teacher approach, right?
yeah,
Um, and go back when I was in college. The guy who won the national championship was Bobby Knight.
yeah,
Like you could not find two more different individuals in coaching between those two people. They both have high standards. They both get people to perform, but they do it in a radically different way.
yeah,
And I think, and we just lived through the Olympics. And what was the story that came out of the Olympics? It was Alyssa Liu,
yeah,
who rediscovered the joy of performance, and it wasn't this anxious, depressed kid. She evolved past that. So I think like as a society, we've gotten a little wiser, I think,
yeah,
um,
yeah,
about this sort of stuff. We've experienced the race to nowhere. We've experienced the people who achieve everything in their life and have emptiness. And when you see that as vividly as we've seen it in recent years, um, you naturally were built to kind of go the other way. Let's say, okay, we know what that is. That's where we don't want to do. So let's explore over here. And so I
yeah,
think a lot of people are feeling the exact same thing. It's sort of like this. I've heard people call it like the humanist revival.
yeah,
Here we are in this super tech, fast moving world. And man, it's something kind of neat about slowing down, getting in tune with your real community. Tech's not going to save you in the end. Tech's not going to raise you a great kid or build you a great championship. But community's kind of magical. Like
yeah,
when you look at high performing groups and people, they're always like I think what we've learned, I guess we could sum up this this learning that we've all had. It's like um, we're not islands. We see individuals succeeding. We think it's just an individual, but you scratch the surface and everybody's connected to these communities. And that's kind of what we're seeing. It's like we're seeing the world in a fresh way. So it's
yeah.
kind of an exciting moment.
Yeah. Before Jerry jumps in, I just want to say what one thing I learned just reading about Dusty May was he was actually Bobby Knight's student manager. So he worked under Bobby Knight, and
Hmm.
he is now the second person I know of who's become a very successful coach who did that.
Hmm.
And what my other friend who is a soccer coach says is that Bobby Knight, for all his faults, which are very publicly clear, was a phenomenal teacher. He said,
Mm.
I've never seen a better teacher of the game.
Wow.
And so I think what Dusty May took from him was
Hmm.
becoming an incredible teacher and then layered on, but I will be a more effective teacher if I can connect with humans and have them connect with each other.
Yeah.
Um, because I mean, his Michigan team this year were all transfers, right?
Yeah.
Like so he didn't have 4 years to get them working together. He had to create this fulfilling, connected, deep rooted community pretty quickly.
On the fly. And that's kind of the beautiful thing of what we're learning. It's like we think that creation process is magical. Like, oh, you just have it or don't. But no, he operates, and I think good community builders operate, as I saw in the research for the book, with an incredible degree of intention.
Hmm.
Um, they're tough and they're warm. As somebody described Greg Popovich one time, they said, he'll tell you the truth and he'll love you to death.
Hmm.
And it's like, what a great summary of what it is to be a great coach. It's not just giving people brutal honesty, it's both. And the great coaches I think we're seeing are able to, with high intent, create that kind of community chemistry and magic. If we're talking about good teams that did that, Mike Vrabel at the New England
Yeah.
Patriots, at the first practice this year, he had him do an exercise that I actually wrote about in the book, which is the 4 H's exercise,
Yeah.
where you talk about your hope and your hero and your heartbreak and your history. And it's awkward, it's vulnerable, and it set a tone where all year long, all of a sudden, they see each other as individuals. They created that community with intent. They didn't sort of wait for it to happen or not, but the leaders actually are able to create conditions where that can happen.
Yeah. Jerry, I know you want to jump in here because you've spent
Wow.
decades creating these type of communities. Even before, Dan, you do such a great job writing about the science. Jerry, you always say like these are things that I always felt intuitively. I didn't need science to tell me that
Hmm.
this works. So Jerry, jump in here.
Wow. What an opening, John. Talk about getting inviting into a community. I'm honored to be here. And Yeah, there's a lot of things that I knew intuitively, but people like you, Dan, and others come along and get into the science and dive into the reason. And so scientifically today, I can back up my statement, feelings equal function.
Hmm.
In that community of the patriots, uh, that community created feelings that were elevated where people felt, okay, I'll list off the things they felt relevant, important. They feel valued. They feel uh, uh, empowered. And one of the things they feel is loved.
Mm.
And so getting way, way back to the beginning of the conversation, I always felt like when I was in environments where I felt love and I felt cared for, that I always performed at my highest level. And that was just intuitively. And so I just took that and ran with it and started to applying it to the work that I was doing with teams. And sure enough, 45 years later, people like yourself and others are coming along and you're showing that indeed this is real. This is scientifically based. It's a scientific based, culture driven environments that where people feel safe, where they feel heard, they feel listened to, they feel like they belong. And when that happens, feelings equal function. Another way of saying that is feelings equal performance. So I try to create those environments. John and I, through Way of Champions, try to create environments where people feel, for want of another word, loved.
Hmm. Yeah.
We see people as human beings, not human doings. We
Yeah.
feel as though they're part of a community, something bigger than themselves where they belong. We
Yeah.
feel like, and I love the word intentional because this is all done intentionally. Before we got on today, we had this short conversation about creating safe environments. And one of the first things I like to do when I jump out of bed in the morning is how am I going to go about the day and create an environment that's going to make sense where people can feel loved. And by the way, that toughness and the coaching from a great Popovich, I happen to know something about that, and as you do. Uh, but he would tell his players, the only reason why I'm busting your ass, or the only reason, and he would use those words, well,
Hmm.
the only reason why I'm coming down hard on you is because I love you. If I
Yeah.
didn't care about you, you wouldn't hear from me. So that hard work is I want to bring out the best in your writing. So I'm going to force you to do a little bit more work on that and maybe do a book every 3 years or 5 years or something like that. So I'll give you a lot of love for that.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
and we'll go forward. Anyway, you're nodding and yesing and all of that. I'm just going to throw it out and say, where does that go? What does that all mean?
What does it all mean? I mean, let's go back and let's go forward. Let's go back. Why does it exist? Like, because we often think of that, start talking about love and belonging, and everybody kind of goes, oh, let's sing Kumbaya. Oh, that sounds so sweet and soft. Um, yeah. And it's the deepest thing we've been wired with. Like, why did our ancestors make it through some pretty challenging things for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years? How did they do that? It wasn't by being rugged individuals. It wasn't by throwing a chair when things didn't go our way, right? It was about creating feelings that allowed people to function. Like, and those feelings are always connective. And we tend to think about those things as being kind of soft headed, but as Popovich shows, and I think as you show, there's a firmness to it. There's a firmness to it. And that's what's kind of beautiful about it because you're not trying to create something that you're not trying to create something new. What you're trying to do is unlock something that's waiting to be unlocked because we are
Yeah.
pre-wired for this. You don't have to do a lot of work to make all of a sudden it happen, but what you do have to do is signal clearly and create clear spaces. And the people that the pattern that I saw over and over again at these places was that these coaches, whether it's Popovich, whether it's Dusty May, they're good at creating space where people can actually like sense each other and explore deep questions together and step into uncertainty together. You don't have coaches who are know-it-alls. You don't have coaches who are telling people exactly what to do all the time. You have coaches that are asking questions. One of the best like coaching moments that I think about a lot is one that happened between Chip England, who is a shooting coach at the San Antonio Spurs, and Kawhi Leonard, who is a top draft choice, who had a funky shot. His shot was kind of over his head, and if he was going to be a good player, Kawhi did have the potential to be a good player, like a lot of good players. Um, he needed to change his shot. And so one day, Chip England went up to him and said, I got a question for you, Kawhi. You don't need to answer this today. Think about it. This is a big question. My question to you is, do you want to be good or do you want to be great? Think about it. Like, next day, Kawhi Leonard comes back and says, I thought about it. I want to be great. And he said, okay, let's get to work. Let's go. Like what a question that is, right? What a beautiful question to ask him to say, he could have just pelted him with good information. He could have designed 50 drills and given it to him and been the answer man. But Chip England's a great coach. He knows that it starts with a question, with an invitation. And so these good coaches are good at creating these spaces. In the book, I call them awakening cues. But it's like you're creating a space where you can ask a deep question and have people explore that together and step into that uncertainty together. And that's where that love comes from. You don't dictate that to people. You don't just tell people that you do. You actually have to create this space where you are exploring something together and figuring it out and seeing what different people are bringing to this and seeing how much, when you say being valued, where you're valuing them for what they can already do. So it's a whole set of, kind of facilitative behaviors that when you say the word coach, those behaviors don't come to mind. When you say the word coach, there's a mental model that people have, which is a guy usually wearing sunglasses with his arms folded, like talking at people, right?
Bobby Knight.
That's the model, right?
Yeah.
And yet, when you look at great coaches, what you find is people who have the sunglasses off. They're creating spaces. They're asking some question. They're relentlessly curious. They're warm. They're connective, and they're giving people space to step forward and valuing them. So it's really cool, I think, to be part of this, kind of revolution that I think has happened in an astonishingly short time and continues to happen. It's like, you see it in pop culture. You see it with Ted Lasso. You see it in all these places where people are saying, wait a minute, leadership's not what I thought it was, actually. Leadership is actually warmer, deeper, more nuanced, more interesting in the end than just having somebody who knows all the answers.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that you can't be demanding. You just shouldn't be demeaning. Doesn't mean that you can't be tough. You just can't throw a chair at them, right? And it's like these are the things. We just had this other example in the NCAA women's basketball tournament. Brenda Frese, Maryland coach, getting in a player's face, breaking a pattern as this player was struggling, and people are saying, "Oh my God, look at her yelling at her." And yet she came out and the player came out afterwards and said, no, I asked her to coach me hard.
Yeah.
I asked her to do that. So they had built this relationship of love and trust.
Mm-hmm.
And as our friend and podcast guest here, Betsy Butterick, who works with that program, said, you have to bring the love before you bring the tough. Tough love is great,
that's
but
good.
you can't just bring the tough, right? And too many coaches jump to the tough without forming that. So there you had on television a coach and an athlete who had multiple time together, hours upon hours, meetings, an athlete who came to the program and said, I want you to coach me hard, right? I love to be coached hard. And that's what I asked for. And our problem sometimes in coaching, I call the ESPN coaches, they see the clip and go, oh, that's coaching right there. They see Pop yelling at a player on the sideline, and they forgot that he showed up at his door with a bottle of wine when the team signed him and said, welcome to the team. Let me get to know you.
I know. And relationships, like so much of this comes down to relationships. And we can sometimes think that the relationships are just going to happen on their own, or that they're just going to happen when I exchange information with you. But relationships happen in moments, right? In moments where somebody asks to be coached. Like that's a hell of a moment, actually, for that player to ask that coach that, and for the coach to say, all right, I hear you. Let's do it. So these changes, these like chains of little moments that out of which relationships are built are really those things that create those feelings that allow you to function. And I think we see great coaches being tuned into the power of those. They're not information machines. They're like moment machines. I think great coaches are like moment machines where they can create a moment and they can create a moment that's not about them, but that is about us, right? And that's how they kind of think. There was as I spend part of the year in Ohio, so I'm really familiar with the story of how, the I think the Cavaliers were ahead one NBA final against Golden State, and LeBron was kind of having his way with the team. And Steve Kerr had a famous meeting with his staff and said, "How can we change our defense on LeBron?" And the person who raised his hand with an answer, the answer that ended up kind of tipping the series, was a video intern. The video intern raised his hand and said, "I have an idea." That was a good idea. Got shared. They did it. Flipped the series. Um, and think about for a second all the moments that came before that moment, where the video intern was invited to be a part of the conversation, where he wasn't demeaned, to use your words, where he was part of it. So so many moments had to happen for him to be able to raise his hand and say, I have an idea, coach. Like, that's what good coaches do. And that's what makes Kerr special, I think. It's the moments before the moments, because we only see often the very end product of that relationship, right? But that relationship's a living thing that's being nurtured through these moments. It's an ecosystem. It's not a machine. And an ecosystem, you got to tend for things and and foster them and nurture them. And that's what good coaches are doing with those little moments of nurture that end up blooming into these moments where the least powerful person in the room can step up and say, I have an idea.
It's amazing. We've had Steve Kerr on the podcast a couple times, and Jerry and him have a very close relationship.
Oh,
And
man.
one of the things that he talks about is every player on my roster needs something different. So Steph Curry needs me to protect his time with his family and to play golf because of all the demands. The 14th guy on the bench is worried about, am I going to get another contract, or is my basketball career over? And I
Yeah.
can't coach them the same. I can't connect with them the same. And one of the things I think is amazing about Steve, which he shared, is like, I was never a starter in the NBA, right? I won 5 championships, but I always really came off the bench. So I'm very cognizant of what it's like as a coach to sit on the bench and wonder if you're going to get in.
Yeah.
And so many coaches only think about their 5 basketball players or their 11 starting soccer players, whatever it is. But that ability to build that relationship and connect with what each individual needs, that's the foundation of creating a flourishing community.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, go ahead.
When I asked Steve years ago when they won their first championship in 2015, I was doing some consultant work with him, and I asked him the question, and I had no idea what the answer would be. And I said, Steve, so what was the most important game that you won going down the road to winning the championship? And I thought he was going to say, well, it was game number 3 in Cleveland. That was
Hmm.
pivotal. Or the OKC game, they were down 3-1. So you got to know that fourth, fifth game was so crucial in terms of winning it. But he said none of that. He said the most important game I won was the relationship game.
Mm.
And
Whoa.
from that place, he garnered their trust and respect, and he created an environment that felt safe. And in those environments, we tend to proliferate because we're feeling a certain way. It gets back to our conversation about feelings equal function. Now we're
Hmm.
feeling a certain way. Now we're going to function at a higher level. So that that camera guy, the guy who is doing the camera work for the video work for the Warriors, I forget his name, but he made a suggestion and was able to, because he felt safe enough in that environment where he would be listened to. And I think listening is an important component of this. I love your idea of asking really good questions. And I need to do that more in my life, is ask the right question. But it's also the listening to the answer. And by
Yeah.
listening, I don't mean like formulating an answer to that person, but to really listen and ask yourself, what can I learn here?
Yeah.
How can I get
Uh,
better as a result of listening to Dan Coyle after
yeah.
I ask a question? And so,
Yeah, I love that. It really, for me, what you say puts a spotlight on the fact that safety is not necessarily about, wrapping people in bubble wrap and making them feel comfortable. That word kind of implies that, like, oh, I feel safe. It's
yeah,
actually about voice.
yeah,
Like, it's about courage. It's about
yeah,
creating a thing where people can step
courage.
forward, right?
Hmm.
They're not actually safe spaces. They're courageous spaces, I think would be a way to put it. And that's what you're trying to create as a coach. You're trying to create a place where, hey, if where we can build a group brain together, where
Yeah.
we can solve problems together, where people can feel comfortable sharing their
Yeah.
gifts and their
Yeah.
ideas. And it's a
Yeah.
courageous space.
Well, courage is an interesting word because courage, comes from the French word cour or the Spanish word corazón, which means heart,
Mm,
which is really what love is all about. And
yeah.
what we're talking about here is creating environments. And again, try to see things simply from 30,000 feet. Your environment is one of two things. It's either going to be one based on fear, where you're afraid to ask the question, you're afraid to volunteer a suggestion, or you're afraid to ask this publisher this question. It's either coming from fear or it's coming from love.
Mm,
And by love, we get back to, as you say, I like that a lot. It's not a kumbaya moment, standing around the fire with your hands held and what have you. It's more about demanding from those that you care about because you know they can be better. It's all about creating a supportive environment where people can feel heard and important and relevant and demonstrating that caring because love is a four-letter word, but it's also a verb. And to create an environment where you demonstrate that verb, do things specifically
yeah.
to do that.
Yeah. It's so cool. I really like the way you describe that. And, you know, it, it's challenging this day and age to do that because life just keeps speeding up and the demands keep coming. Coaches are pulled a million different
Yeah.
directions, and so it ends up that idea that it's that the relationship game, as Steve Kerr said, is the one that you're actually playing is beautifully kind of clarifying, and that's what I saw. And to play that, you have to do something hard, which is you have to pause. Like it's a skill that I think it's probably the most underrated skill that I saw when I was, spending time with great leaders. You know, the higher you are, the more pressurized your life is, the more you are filled with forces that are pulling you to be certain and to be fast and to get things done. And the ability to pause for yourself, to pause in conversation, to create pauses for your group, um, ends up being a real difference maker because in that pause is actually that's where you're creating space for relationships to grow. That's where you're creating space for questions to be explored. That's where you're creating space for surprise, um, for new energy to be formed, as opposed to simply just going through life like an algorithm or like a machine, like just getting things done, getting things done. And all of us know what that feels like. You grind, but the grind will make you empty unless you have a systematic, practiced understanding of how important it is to pause and how to navigate a pause and how to navigate that discomfort that it brings and how to invite other people into it. Like that 4-H's exercise that Vrabel did. All the players afterwards said it was super awkward,
Mm.
right? It was super awkward. We just have this new coach. We should be practicing right now. And we're not practicing. We're sitting in a room in groups of 3 and 5, like talking about where we came from and talking about our hero and talking about our heartbreak. Really hard to do, really strange. It feels unproductive. Like everybody wants to be productive. This world pulls us to be productive. And yet the ability to say, wait, we're not going to be productive. We're going to be generative. We're going to nurture our relationships right now. That takes some courage to do. That takes some self-control. That takes some patience. That takes some wisdom and understanding it. That's where I think to go back to some of the science stuff, understanding that this isn't witchcraft and this isn't woo woo. This is how we're built to connect. We connect in the pause. We don't connect in the frenetic action all the time with having all the answers. We connect through pauses and questions. I
Yeah.
think of them as like connective pauses. So, how many connective pauses can you have as a coach? Like,
Yeah.
there's probably a number, right, that will really improve your coaching.
And that 2 hours that Vrabel spent on that was far more productive than any 2 hours of anything they could have practiced all season long. And so many coaches get stuck. Oh, we don't have time for this culture stuff or visualization or all these things. So we have all this stuff that we have to get through. And it's like, no, this is going to make it more effective if we do this. And now people will play for each other. And because I know Dan's story, I know Jerry's story, I know John's story, I know what he went through to get here, and so I play for that guy because he's supporting his family or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important. I want to ask you because I think one of the most powerful emotions that bring communities together, and one that Jerry and I are exploring a lot is gratitude. And you
Mm.
talk about this psychologist Lisa Miller in the book,
Hmm.
and this activity that she put you through, inviting people to your dinner table who have your best interest in mind. And it
Yeah.
was a very emotional experience for you. And when I read it, I'm like, I'm going to do this. And it was a very emotional experience for me
Hmm.
too. So maybe talk about that and what that has to do with gratitude, has to do with flourishing communities.
Yeah, it's like these what I saw people doing in these flourishing communities was they were good at the connective pause. They were good at stopping, at having rituals that were not utilitarian. They were not producing anything. It was about all rituals are basically like now us. Like kind of every ritual has that deep in its grammar. Whatever that ritual is, now us. And her way of doing that with me was this little exercise. And she's an interesting person. She studies the brain. She works at Columbia. She's a psychologist. Um, she said, close your eyes, picture a wooden table. And around that table, I want you to picture people who truly have your best interest in mind, people who, living or deceased, who are on your side. The handful of people that, 6, 8, 10 people, I would picture them coming and taking a seat. And now picture yourself walking up to that table and taking a seat. And now ask those people, what is it that I need to know right now about the path that I'm on? What is it that I need to know right now? And listen to their answer. And it's a short exercise. It's like, in many ways you could sort of think of it as just a woo woo strange little thing. It's just neurons in your brain are firing, right? And yet if you do that sincerely and if you really think about all the people in your life, living and deceased, who have helped you get where you are, who truly have your best interest in mind, and what would they tell you? It lights up new pathways for you. It gives you this sense of groundedness. It grounds you. And I think that's what good communities are doing all the time. I think they are creating that space, doing that non-productive, silly, woo-woo moment where they're thinking, what matters most? Where are we going? What can we learn from each other? Who are we? Where are we connected? And and you can't help but get to a space of gratitude when you zoom out like that. You can't help but say, wait a minute, I didn't get here on my own. For God's sake, I'm not a rugged individual. I'm part of this huge web. Did you ever bump into I think it's called Waka Papa, I think it's
Yeah.
called. It's
Yeah. Belonging. Yeah.
belonging. I mean,
Yeah.
and this visual image of like, you and all your ancestors are holding hands, going back in time, going forward in time. The sun is on you right now,
Hmm.
but it's just on you right now because the world is spinning, but you're connected to those people. And again, the modern world speeds us up, and in the history of humanity, we spend by far the least amount of time thinking those kind of thoughts, thinking about how we got here, thinking about the people who we're connected to, thinking, zooming out in time and seeing how we got here. So that makes those moments doubly powerful when you do have them. And I think that's connected to, I think, the power of gratitude, because it makes you get out of your own head, realize that you're not the center of the world. You're part of this living ecosystem of relationships, and it grounds you in relationships. That's what gratitude does. And that's why such a powerful thing to be able to stop and appreciate. If it comes down to that, to be able to stop and appreciate. And it grounds you. And like all grounding, that gives you energy and direction. Like, why is grounding possible? It like gives you clarity.
Hmm. And
I got
that,
so many thoughts going on
yeah,
right
go
now,
ahead,
John.
Jerry, because
It's
I
just
knew you were going to
amazing.
jump
I'm
in.
I'm being flooded. I'm being flooded with all kinds of levels of emotion. Uh, my first point, I just want to make this point about gratitude because it's a very important, very, very important value in my life. Every day I list 7 things that I'm grateful for. And then what I do is I take them, I breathe them in. I do an exercise where I breathe them into my heart and hold them there. And then I tell myself, Jerry, go about the day and make it a reflection for everything you've been given. And what I notice about that exercise is, yes, I'm feeling grateful. I'm feeling grateful. But what happens is I start to feel joy. I start to feel happy. I start to feel connected. I start to feel loving. and caring and giving and selfless. And so gratitude becomes this umbrella, and I can control that. And this gets to my second point, which is intentionality, because we have a bunch of listeners out there, and it's easy for them to say or think, "Oh, there's John. He's up in Bend, Oregon. Wonderful. What a beautiful place. Goes skiing and fly fishing." And there's Jerry in Santa Cruz. He lives a block from the ocean, and he hears the elephant seals at night barking. And then there's Dan Coyle. And Dan, by the way, you spend a lot of time in Homer, Alaska. But what I'm saying is that these are intent. We're there. We go to these places or live in these places out of intention because we're getting something from it and we're giving back to that. And we're grateful for where we live and what we have and what have you. But what I don't want to overlook is that you, the listener, you can intend upon creating a grateful environment or a safe environment or one that's built on courage. And I want people to understand that leading into a question. Therefore, Dan, what is it about Homer that summarizes everything we're talking about? I mean,
Yeah.
I know you know that. And that's why what pulls you back to Homer, Alaska every year in May? And how does that fit in? How does your choice and your intention fit in with everything you're writing about and talking about right now?
Yeah, that's great. Well, it's a Homer's a little town at the end of the road, as you know. It sounds like you've been there, Jerry. It's the bumper sticker is it's a quaint drinking village with a fishing problem, and it's a 5 mile spit out into this beautiful bay, mountains. It looks like the
Homer
rock
Spit.
Homer
Yeah,
spit.
yeah.
And I started going there as a kid, fell in love with the place, had a family cabin down there. And so when my wife and I were married, talk about a moment. We had a moment where we were vacationing and we realized, I think we need to live here. I think we need to raise our kids here. And we became part of that community. And it's 3,000 people. And so when your kids grow up there, you get, just there's a million little things about living in a small town, especially a small town at the end of the road where everybody's family's far away. So you have to make a family there, right? You found family. And the thing that I guess typifies Homer the most is every Christmas holiday, all the fishermen and the loggers and the accountants and the doctors, all the families come together and they put on this big ballet, the Nutcracker Ballet, and they've made it into this spectacular event. Um, and you've got people are sewing costumes and people are doing the food and the whole town comes together and that there's really not a great reason for it. Like it doesn't produce anything. It's not utilitarian in any way, but it's just this beautiful shared community experience. That's hard. That's really hard to do too. It's really hard to be excellent and put on a great show together. And so it's like this great rhythm of life there that we've really locked into. And, we've just found some of the deepest relationships of our lives are in that place. So you just get, community is curative, like for whatever ails you, right? Like community is curative, and that's what we've found in this sped up world. And like any family, we're dealing with a lot of stuff, and but when you get it's got this grounding effect where all of a sudden when you're there, it's not magic, right? But you are more grounded. You feel more connected. You feel those relationships. You recognize faces in the grocery store and in the post office line. And that's what makes you feel alive, just like your morning routine. Like
It's yeah,
it puts in your face all the things that you should be grateful for, and it brings joy and the sense of aliveness to every moment.
it's a place where you flourish.
Yeah, yeah, I would say it is.
So
We're not the only ones.
we create that, we discover it, we travel, we go places to learn. I've lived in 7 different states, 8 different states. I've lived out of the country, all in search of what we're talking about.
Hmm.
It's no accident I am where I am. It's no accident I get up in the morning and do what I do. It's all intentional. And
Yeah.
that's an important word because people think it's going to magically happen if they read your book or they read my book or John's book. It's not. It's going to be take action. Love is a verb, and love
Mhm.
is love for yourself and love for your community and love for life. And it's a vibrancy that happens, and it starts with gratefulness. And I'm just trying to see all the connections of everything we're talking to here, and it's huge, it's massive, but it
Yeah.
boils down to some very few simple concepts. The title of your book is one of them, which is Flourishing. And what does that mean? And how can we intentionally create a life where we flourish?
I love your focus on action. I think it really is. It really there's a sense being a modern person, you sort of are always a consumer of things. You know, you're always a consumer. But
Oh
when it comes
gosh.
to this stuff, it's like you're a citizen. You're an active, accountable, creator of your own future. Your future is not going to just sort of show up for you.
Yeah.
You have to be the one reaching out, making it happen.
Yeah. Well,
And
life is happening even if we don't make it happen. Life, I tell people, I say to people, life is volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, it's ambiguous, and it's also fearful.
Mm.
Or it's not by what we do intentionally by taking action to make those things change. And we're in charge. And you know what? The good news is we can control all of this.
but Dan, like you
John,
you have choice, right? And you
choice.
have this. I think it's also a Lisa Miller thing at the end of the book: red lights, green lights, and yellow
Hmm.
lights. And
Hmm.
we have agency to choose. Sometimes choices are made for us; those would be the
Hmm.
red lights, and sometimes they're made for us, and those are the green lights. But we have these yellow light moments in our life, and
Yeah.
I think your process of discovery in this book, you tell kind of a cool story about yellow light moments where our initial reaction is, nope, that's not me. And
Hmm.
yet those moments can be the greatest moments of development, growth, community. So just talk about that for a second. And then I want to bring it back to sports specific and talk about your work with the Cleveland Guardians.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Yeah. She calls them the yellow doors, is what Lisa calls them. And it's like
Oh, yeah,
she's
Leo Doors,
into
sorry.
this idea of, I think McConaughey has those great green lights,
Yeah,
right?
green
He's
light,
so good.
sorry.
Green lights.
Yeah.
This, this is, these are doors. And it's really a beautiful idea because we do go through life kind of with this narrow task focus of like, okay, is green means go, red means stop. But the yellow ones are those signals that are like neither go nor stop. It's a mixed signal. And I had a good example of one in my life. A friend of mine invited me to go climbing. He'd just gotten divorced. He wanted to go get a group of guys to go indoor climbing. And I don't like heights and I don't like indoor climbing. I find it's fussy and the shoes and everything. But it's like, you know what? I kind of yellow doored it. I was like, I'm going to give it a try. And I did. And turned out the guys were just great. They were just delightful. And it just grew into this, we started taking trips together and our families start hanging out and we play music together. And it's just been like one of the real delights of my life. And it didn't happen. It wasn't something we engineered, right? It was something that grew because we all stepped into uncertainty together and we're all doing this thing that we're all kind of uncomfortable doing. And then it's, oh, let's do something else. Oh, let's do something else. Let's do something else. I never liked the Grateful Dead. I always thought they were stupid and kind of twiddly long solos. I wasn't into the Dead. I was not. My best friend in high school was always telling me to get into the Dead. I never believed him. And this group went to a Dead and Company concert, great tribute band. It kind of woke me up like, oh, these guys, this is great. Actually, I really now I've spent the last like 3 years, just really enjoying that whole world. So these yellow door things are they're proof that like to your point, Jerry, like life is alive. Life is not a machine, and if you're going to participate in a living system, you can't approach it like you're like it or you are like a robot. Like you actually have to reach out and explore and test and see and probe and see if that works. And then something else will pop up and then see where that spark of energy leads you. It's a living experience. It's a living conversation. Um, and so that was, kind of a revelation that, you go through life thinking I need to plan my way forward. And it's like, no, you don't need to plan your way forward. You need to explore your way forward alongside other people.
I love that, and I just have to say what I loved about that is you had a name for your group, the climbing guys, and I believe the Beladies, which was pretty cool. The
the
wives, the
Pallades.
Beladies,
Oh my God.
which I love. But I was reading that, and I was thinking of my own communities that I am a part of, a guys group that I play golf with, and a group that I ski and bike with or whatever. And these are different communities that I operate in that don't have a ton of crossover. And then I have when I lived in Colorado, an old group of soccer teammates, and that group is titled Welcome to the Shit Show. So it's like I have all these communities, and every time a text pop up, I have childhood friends called the commitments, and we commit to see each other, every
Ah,
2 years. We went to elementary school together, and they're all coming to Bend, Oregon this summer, and it's like,
that's amazing.
and
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
these communities that we are a part of are so critical to
Yeah.
our lives and to flourishing and living a full life. And I think, to bring this back to sports, as a coach, I have to remember that I am potentially creating, if I do it right, one of those communities that 30 years from now, that group of guys or women or mixed is still connected because of all these things we're talking about in this book, in the environment that I allowed to happen or create. And we can never forget that, can we?
I
Yeah.
love that. It's crazy powerful how coaches are. How powerful coaches are in people's lives. It's just somebody signs up to coach Little League, and you're going to be part of that person of that group's life for the rest of their life. They will always remember that coach. They'll always remember the feeling of being on that team. They'll always remember the successes and failures and the connections. It is a great privilege and an honor to coach. And where else do we get that in life? It's just incredible.
I want to come back to the Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
Of course, of
Of
course.
course.
You wouldn't expect anything less.
No, no, you're in
Okay.
Santa Cruz.
Hey, come on, right? In fact, a funny story is my primary doctor was Jerry Garcia's primary doctor.
Ooh.
Jerry used to come down from San Francisco and be so in the office is all this stuff about the Grateful Dead and so forth.
Oh.
But anyway, it's just that's an interesting part of the story. But I find what's more interesting is you getting to love the Grateful Dead later in life.
Hmm.
And the reason why that's interesting is Joseph Campbell, one of my mentors, and certainly someone who's influenced my work a lot, just absolutely loved the Grateful Dead.
I didn't
And
know that. Oh,
yeah,
wow.
and now here's the reason why. The reason why he loved the Grateful Dead, he said, there's no other band, there's no other group that brings together people more closely in a community setting than the Grateful Dead. I love going to a Dead concert, he said, and I'm sort of paraphrasing this, because there are children, grandmothers, grandfathers, aunts, uncles, moms, dads, and what have you. It's a whole community experience. It's coming together in this quote unquote safe place where everyone's going to be kind, where everyone's going to be good to each other, and where everyone's going to experience love. So I think with that as a backdrop, for Joseph Campbell to feel that way about this group and to see your trajectory coming through, and now all of a sudden you discover, hey, that's pretty cool. I mean,
Yeah.
what was I missing? That might have been part of it. I think what happens is we grow into this idea of the importance of community
Hmm.
and the closeness and connectedness, and they certainly represented that.
And we're craving it and we recognize it when we see it.
We crave it.
We crave
That's the
it.
word,
And so
crave.
when we see it, we're just like, oh
When we
man.
feel it,
Yeah, that's right.
not see
That's
it.
right. No, that's right. When we feel it.
It's a
That's right.
feeling. We
Yeah.
crave that feeling.
I think
Yeah,
that's true, Jerry. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Dan, this journey that you've been on, to bring it full circle from the
Yeah.
talent code to culture to now flourishing, has also traced a path of your work with the Cleveland Guardians. I
Mm.
think they came to you after the talent code and said, "Hey, we're a small market team or a small budget. If we do what everyone else is doing, we're never going to win because we can't
Hmm.
outspend the Yankees or the Dodgers." So talk about that journey, because it's like you've gotten to evolve with them as an organization, and you've gotten to evolve as a writer and as a human being, you know, sort of doing the research and bringing them to a professional sports organization. So kind of let people know, if you can, like what that journey's been like.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. I mean, they're as you described, they are a really small market team in a very unfair situation where there are teams that spend four times as much money as they do, five times as much money. Um, and so in 2013, after they had realized they'd just seen a connection between my work and what they were trying to do, they're trying to grow players, they're trying to grow talent. And so we started this conversation, and it doesn't like it's not I'm officially like a consultant for the team, but that what that looks like is I go in the office maybe one afternoon every 2 weeks, maybe, and then I go out for spring training for like 10 or 12 days every year, and then have continual kind of conversations with various people. But the way it's evolved is um, they've tried to create kind of a human-centered people development system, um, where instead of kind of doing development to the player, you're creating spaces where the player can develop themselves with the players. So we're creating spaces where people with intrinsic motivation. So, for example, instead of having a telling the player what their goal is and telling them what to do, we have these 360 meetings where every domain gets together with the player, and the player ideally kind of leads it, and talks about their vision for themselves. Every player will sort of write and produce a vision for who the player they think they can be. And the player owns that development to the extent that that's possible. And that extends all the way through the organization. Like, we have to build, this was interesting. I guess a lot of your audience might be familiar, might be coaches. Well, we realized early in this thing, and that's been, I think, 12 years, 13 years that I've been working with them. Early on, it was like, well, if we're going to build great players, we have to create great coaches. We have to, we have to really up our coaching and build great coach development systems. And so the first thing we did, which was a mistake, we brought in expert coaches to tell our coaches how they should coach. We brought in Michael Phelps's coach. We brought in a Navy SEAL commander who actually led the group that got bin Laden. We brought in all these people, and our coaches were great. They listened, they took it in, they had these great conversations, but it didn't change their behavior. It didn't really move the needle, until somebody finally suggested, hey, what if we flipped it? What if instead of bringing in experts, we had our coaches get into small groups and ask them to explore this question: who is the best coach you ever saw? And what did they do? They and that absolutely went from, our coaches went from being in kind of a defensive crouch, like, you don't think I'm good enough, you're bringing these experts, to, wait a minute, I feel seen, valued, heard, loved, if you might say that, Jerry. And I'm going to share, and all of them have immense experiences. Talk about gratitude. All of them have these immense experiences throughout their careers where they've seen great coaching. And that became our coaching model of excellence. They had those conversations. We compiled it, figured out the themes, figured out the pillars. That's our coaching model of excellence to this day. And that's the play we've been running over and over again, where it's like, instead of bringing in outside experts, let's get into small groups. Let's navigate this together. Let's develop as a community, not as a set of individuals. And it's not always an easy way to work. It's sometimes hard to work that way. But in the end, because it feels slow and it feels like you're always having endless meetings, and but with people at the center of the value system, with learning, excellence, and collaboration at the center of the value system, and you're constantly circling up and having these kind of energizing, bubbling meetings where you're going to suggest bad ideas and good ideas, and you try to pick the good ones and explore them some more. We've, over the last 13 years, we've won the third most games in baseball, and we've spent $1.5 billion less than the Yankees. So, like,
as a Yankee fan, that hurts, Dan. That hurts.
Sorry, dude. Well, you got all the money though, which is good, and you're also hiring a lot of our coaches. Your pitching coach is a former
Jerry
guy.
and I are both New Yorkers, so two Yankee fans here. And
oh yeah, well, you guys have had the best of us for sure, but someday we hope to David and Goliath you guys.
Yeah. It's an amazing story though, and I love that, because Jerry and I often talk about, like, we go to a room and we're like, it's not like, you don't need the outside voice. There's way more expertise sitting in front of us than there is up here on the stage. If you will rely on each other and share your stories and be vulnerable, you can put, right? A university has tons of good coaches, but how often does the football coach flail without ever asking the volleyball coach who's won multiple championships, what's your secret?
Yeah.
Right? We get this ego around coaching that kills our ability to develop. And I think these coaches like a Popovich, like Steve Kerr that we've talked about here, like a Dusty May, they're always looking for, they're humble and they're curious.
Yeah,
that's great.
Right.
One of the things I instituted when I was working at University of North Carolina years ago is we would have a lunch visit by all the coaching staff. I'm talking about people like Anson Dorrance, so Jenny Levy, We're looking at Roy Williams. Uh, all of these coaches would come to the lunch, and I would set up the lunch, and we start having a conversation, throw out a few questions, and blah blah blah. And now I think about it down there. Now they just hired Mike Moore, not Mike Moore,
Malone, maybe?
Malone, another Irishman from New York, uh, Queens actually. But they just hired him, and of course they have Bill Belichick up in Boston. But uh, those, to our point here, bringing in the coaches, and to your point, Dan, you empower them to give them the power that I have something really good to say here. I have something to
Mhm.
contribute. But I can remember jotting down sheets of notes coming away feeling I had all this material to write a book because I was just listening to all of these amazing champion level coaches to respond to questions about leadership and what that meant to them. And they weren't afraid. It was all in-house, and they weren't afraid to talk about it. And they all came away feeling really good after an hour and a half. It was just a wonderful experience.
Oh, what a
Yeah.
great space.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Wonderful
Intent,
space.
space, right. Perfect.
Yeah.
Dan, want to be respectful as we end up here. Is there anything you wish that we asked you or talked about that we didn't? Anything you'd love to share with our audience as kind of a concluding thought, and then we'll, just tell them how to get this great new book, Flourish.
I think we solved every single problem that anyone could ever
Yeah.
have
Good
today, right? I
answer.
think we
Good
covered it. I
answer.
don't think there's
Yep.
literally no box that we left unchecked. I mean, I'm just interested to kind of see where this continues to go. I think you guys are kind of on the forefront of a really interesting space, and so I hope you keep the conversation going and keep seeing where this leads because it feels like it's leading in a good direction. Maybe both, not just for sports, not just for education, but kind of for everybody. I think everybody needs this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Um,
Well
the
said.
book is Flourish, The Art of Building Meaning, Joy, and Fulfillment. Dan, how can they get it, and how can they connect with you?
Yeah, it's on sale most places, every place, hopefully. And they can find me through danielcoyle.com. Just as a link you can hit and sends an email that magically shows up on my screen.
Awesome. Well, we truly appreciate it. And like I said, we've both been a huge fan of your writing journey. And not only have we had the privilege of having you on the podcast a couple times, but reading your books and quoting you often. And you've been a massive influence on me personally, and I know on Jerry. And so we truly appreciate you carving out the time and writing these great books. And I hope, as Jerry said, it's not 5 more years before the next one.
Me too. Me too. Well, you guys are the dynamic duo. Thank you for making this happen and for all you do. It's super fun.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, man.
All the best.
Whew, Jerry, that was pretty awesome.
You know, are we saying this like at the end of everything we're doing, every time we do one? Because everyone seems to be more awesome than the previous one. But
Sometimes it feels
but
like that,
but
but I
it
guess that's a
feels
really good problem to have.
I'm not, yeah, I'm not upset at that at all. But as far as Dan, I missed the first time he was on,
Yeah.
and oh my God, I'm so glad that I caught you in time to make this one. And I learned so much, and the way he expresses things, and the subject matter, and everything is so connected in his life. And even to the point of choosing Homer, Alaska, which I thought was relevant for him in terms of community and what have you. And I love the way that he really understands that the principles he's talking about are life important principles, and sport can be a vehicle for that or not, but
Hmm.
we can still learn either way about
Yeah.
life.
And if we are coaching a team and we have a bunch of human beings on our team, which we all do, and they are flourishing and they
Uh,
feel safe and they feel connected and they feel valued and all the things we talked about, that's when they're going to perform their best.
yeah,
And you cannot make an argument that people who are scared, unheard, stressed to the nines, living in fear every day, you're going to get the best out of them. It
Right.
just doesn't work like that.
And the
And
interesting thing, John, is that those people who feel stressed and all tied up and tight and tense and tentative, they don't want to feel that way. They want to feel, they don't just want to feel, they crave feeling calm, fluid, flowing, fast, all these other feelings of connection and caring and flourishing. We all want that. We all want it. We crave it. And the reason why I keep working, and I'm sure it means a lot to you as well, is that I know we're making this difference in the world. And, we use our podcast as a way of bringing messages from people who are experts, people who are scientifically based, like Dan is. And it's exciting to me because every time we do something like this, and I meet someone like a Dan Coyle, is how much it strengthens my courage and my tenacity to keep going and to make something make sense.
yeah, yeah, and I think as we talked about these things that we intuitively feel if we've ever been part of a high performing team and a connected group, the science keeps showing us, oh yeah, there's actually something behind this. This is not there's we can see through fMRIs. What does the brain do when it's feeling this versus when it's feeling that? And
That's
how does the
exactly
brain
right.
get narrow and how does the brain get expansive? And now we're starting
Yeah,
to see that
yeah,
scientifically. So
and
this isn't becoming, woo woo. This is actually physiology,
yeah,
right? And
and
and what a powerful thing.
yeah, and the woo-woo feeling is a good feeling. It feels good to be loved, but it also feels good to have people demonstrate love in your life so that that feeling that you get from them allows you to perform at higher levels. I
Yeah.
think we're really becoming less afraid of the word like love or
Hmm.
gratitude or caring and all these feelings that used to be like frowned upon. Now coaches are saying, I'll try it. We'll see what happens. And they find out how happy they are and how happy their athletes are. And yeah, so it's
Well,
all,
I mean, as we talked about college basketball, Dusty May and Corey Close, the UCLA women's coach, talking about love and environments of love and respect. And,
yeah,
Corey Close mentored by John Wooden, who says, I had a lot of love in my coaching. And she spent 15 years at the quote school of champions, not winning a championship, but sticking to that belief that if I love my people will perform. And so
mhm,
I think the more coaches like that who have success on the scoreboard,
yeah,
maybe the more youth coaches and high school coaches will say,
yeah,
you know what?
yeah,
I now have the courage to coach that way because that's what feels good and that's what I loved as a coach, right?
mm,
Who was the best coach you ever had and what did they do? I don't think anyone ever says they berated me and made me feel small.
yeah, 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 exactly. And
Brilliant.
I was going to open up the conversation, but it would have taken us a little bit much longer. I thought that your approach to this, what is it, uh, the sticky notes
Sticky notes. Yeah, yeah.
that you do
Yeah.
was a good demonstration of bringing coaches together and getting their input, even though you and I are there as the quote unquote experts
Yeah, yeah.
who have written books and stuff. But I think what they come away with more than anything from the sticky notes is, like I just had my voice heard. And not only that, but it's pretty spot on.
Yeah.
And I really do have the answer inside. I just need to trust it. And I think what we do is we wind up giving people that ability to be empowered. We empower others so that they can trust themselves to do what they intuitively know is the right thing to do.
And I'm sitting in a room and everyone, though they didn't say it publicly, feels the same thing, right? Like, wow,
Absolutely. Yeah.
that it is about connections and relationships. So
Well,
yeah, well, great
absolutely.
stuff. DanielCoyle.com and the
Is that
book.
his
Yeah.
that his email address?
Daniel Coyle is his website. You can just put that in there. The book is called Flourish, The Art of
Mhm.
Building Meaning, Joy, and Fulfillment. And thank you to all of our supporters, Sprocket Sports, Zone 14 Coaching, Patreon Podcast Champions, and all of you who have supported us through getting books. And hopefully you're getting ready to grab our new book, Captain, Coffee and the
Aha,
Great Captain, coming out here in May
the
2026. Um,
captain.
but for now, everyone, remember your influence is never neutral. So
That's
go
right.
out there, change the world, make a difference, and we'll see you again next week, everybody.